A lonely cowboy takes an abandoned mail-order bride, not knowing she'd change his life forever. The planet Dustfall was not a place people chose. It was a place they ended up in, far away from busy trade routes and shining cities. Dustfall was dry, quiet, and mostly forgotten. The wind never stopped blowing. It carried fine red dust that covered everything. Homes, machines, even the sky. Some days, the sun looked like a dull orange coin behind the haze. Elias Rourke had lived there for 7 years. He lived alone. His ranch sat far from the nearest settlement, surrounded by broken fences and dry land that barely supported life. He raised tough, engineered animals called sand cattle, creatures made to survive heat, hunger, and storms. Even then, half of them didn't make it. Every day was the same. Wake up before sunrise, check the fences, feed the animals, fix whatever the wind had destroyed during the night, eat simple food, sleep, repeat. Elias didn't complain. He wasn't that kind of man. But he didn't smile much either. There had been a time when things were different, a time when he believed in building something bigger, a family, maybe even a future, but that had faded long ago, like everything else on Dustfall. Now, there was only silence. And the wind. One evening, as the sky darkened and the wind howled louder than usual, Elias stood outside his small house, watching the horizon. A storm was coming. He could feel it in the air. The dust clouds were thicker than normal, and the wind carried a strange sound, low and sharp, almost like metal tearing. Elias narrowed his eyes. "That's not a storm," he muttered. Then he saw it. A streak of fire cut across the sky. Something was falling, fast. It burned bright orange as it pushed through the atmosphere, leaving a long trail behind it. Elias stepped forward, shielding his eyes as he followed its path. It wasn't far. Too close. "Damn," he said quietly. A few seconds later, the ground shook. A loud crash echoed across the land, followed by a cloud of dust rising into the air. Elias didn't wait. He turned, grabbed his coat, his old plasma rifle, and a small medical kit, then jumped onto his sand runner, a rough, four-wheel vehicle built for the harsh terrain. The engine roared to life. Within seconds, he was speeding toward the crash site. The wind fought him the whole way. Dust hit his face shield, making it hard to see. The ground was uneven, and more than once, the vehicle nearly flipped. But Elias kept going. Out here, crashes didn't mean accidents. They meant trouble. After 10 minutes, he saw it, a half-buried transport pod, stuck at an angle in the ground. Smoke rose from its broken side. Parts of its outer shell were still glowing from the heat. Elias slowed down and stopped a short distance away. He stepped off the vehicle carefully, rifle in hand. The wind howled around him. For a moment, he just stood there, watching, waiting. Nothing moved. No signs of life. He walked closer. The pod was damaged badly. One side had been torn open, exposing inside. Lights flickered weakly. Sparks jumped from broken wires. Elias circled it slowly. "Hello," he called out. No answer. He stepped closer to the opening and looked inside. At first, he saw nothing but shadows and broken equipment. Then, a movement. Small, weak. Elias froze. "Someone's in there," he whispered. He climbed inside carefully, pushing aside debris. The air smelled burnt and metallic. And then he saw her. A young woman lay strapped into a damaged seat. Her head hung to one side. Her clothes were torn, and there were marks on her arms. Strange marks, like thin lines glowing faintly under her skin. She wasn't moving. Elias quickly checked for a pulse. There, weak, but alive. "Hey!" he said softly, tapping her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" No response. He looked around and noticed a small screen still working beside her seat. It flickered with broken text. He wiped dust off it and tried to read. Cargo status. Rejected. Unit ID, LV-17. Delivery. Failed. Disposition. Abandoned. Elias frowned. "Rejected," he said quietly. His eyes moved back to the woman. That's one hell of a way to say it. He didn't understand everything, but one thing was clear. She had been left behind on purpose. Elias worked quickly. He cut the straps holding her in place and carefully lifted her. She was lighter than he expected. Too light. As he carried her out of the pod, the wind grew stronger, as if the storm was getting closer. "This is getting worse," he muttered. He placed her gently on the sand runner and covered her with his coat. For a second, he hesitated. He could leave her, call it in, let someone else deal with it. That would be the smart choice. Less trouble, less risk. He looked at her face. Pale, still, alone. Elias let out a slow breath. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Not happening." He climbed onto the vehicle and turned it back toward the ranch. The ride back was slower. The storm had started to hit. The wind screamed across the land, pushing the vehicle sideways. Dust filled the air so thick that Elias could barely see a few meters ahead. More than once, he thought about turning back, but he didn't. He kept going. By the time they reached the ranch, the storm was in full force. Elias rushed inside, carrying the woman in his arms. The house was small, just one main room, a kitchen area, and a sleeping space. It wasn't much, but it was safe. He laid her down on his bed and quickly got to work, cleaning wounds, checking for broken bones, giving basic treatment. He wasn't a doctor, but out here, you learn what you had to. After some time, he stepped back. She was breathing better now, still unconscious, but stable. Elias sat down in a chair nearby, watching her. The wind outside shook the walls. For a long moment, there was only silence between them. Then, her fingers moved, just a little. Elias leaned forward. Her eyes slowly opened. They were not normal. There was something strange about them, not a different color, but the way they looked, focused, sharp, like she was seeing more than just a room. She looked at him, confused. "Where?" she whispered weakly. "You're safe?" Elias said calmly. "You crashed near my place. I brought you here." She blinked slowly, trying to understand. "Safe?" she repeated. Her eyes moved around the room, taking everything in, too quickly, too carefully. Elias noticed. "You got a name?" he asked. There was a pause. Then she said, "Lena?" "Lena." Elias nodded. "I'm Elias." She looked back at him, studying him, like she was trying to figure something out. Then very softly, she asked, "Why did you help me?" Elias leaned back in his chair. He thought about it, about the empty years, the silence, the loneliness. Then he shrugged slightly. "Didn't seem right to leave you out there," he said simply. Lena stared at him, as if that answer didn't make sense to her. Or maybe it meant more than he realized. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside that small house on Dustfall, something had changed, and neither of them fully understood it yet. The storm lasted all night. Wind hit the house again and again, like something trying to break in. Dust covered the windows, turning the world outside into a dark red blur. The wooden walls creaked, but they held. Inside it was quiet, too quiet. Elias did not sleep much. He sat in his chair near the bed, his rifle resting against the wall beside him. Every now and then he looked at Lena. She was awake now, but she barely moved. Morning came slowly. The storm had passed, but the sky was still heavy with dust. Light entered the room in a dull orange glow. Lena sat up on the bed. Elias noticed immediately. "You shouldn't move too fast," he said. "You're still weak." She looked down at her hands. Her fingers moved slowly, then faster, as if she was testing them. "I feel fine," she said. Elias frowned. "That's not possible." She turned her arm slightly. The faint glowing lines under her skin were still there, but they looked dimmer now. "Healing. Fast. Too fast." Elias stood up and walked closer. "Those marks," he said. "What are they?" Lena looked at them too. For a moment, her face showed confusion. Then something changed, like a memory trying to come back. "I don't know everything," she said slowly. "But I know I was not supposed to be here." "That much is clear," Elias replied. He crossed his arms. "That pod called you rejected cargo. That's not normal." Lena looked at him again. "Do humans send other humans like cargo?" she asked. Elias gave a small, dry laugh. "Out here? Yeah, sometimes worse." She didn't react to the joke. Instead, She looked around the room again. But this time, it was different. Her eyes moved with purpose. She noticed the cracks in the wall, the weak power unit in the corner, the water container, half empty, even the old tools hanging by the door. It was like she was scanning everything. "You live here alone," she said. Elias paused. "Yeah. No one comes here often." "No." She nodded slightly. Then she said something that made Elias uncomfortable. "This place is failing." Elias looked at her sharply. "What?" "The land," she continued. "The air is unstable. The soil is weak. Water levels are low. This structure," she touched the bed frame, "will not last long." Elias stared at her. "How do you know all that?" Lena blinked. "I just do." Later that day, Elias went outside to check the ranch. He told Lena to stay inside. She didn't argue. But when he stepped out, something felt different. The air was calmer than usual. The wind had dropped. That was rare. Too rare. Elias walked along the fence line, checking for damage. There was some, but not as bad as he expected after such a strong storm. He stopped, looked around. Something was off. Then he saw it. The ground. In one small area near the house, the soil looked darker, healthier. Elias crouched down and touched it. It was still dry, but not dead, not like the rest. He frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Back inside, Lena stood near the window. She was watching the land. Her eyes followed the horizon slowly, as if she was listening to something far away. Elias entered. "You went outside?" he asked. "No," she replied. "You sure?" "Yes." Elias walked closer. "That patch of land out there, it's different." Lena didn't answer. She just looked at it. Then she said very quietly, "It feels better." Elias didn't like that answer. "Feels," he repeated. She turned to him. "I can feel the ground," she said. "It is weak, but it is trying." Elias stared at her. "That's not normal, Lena." She nodded. "I know." That evening, things got worse. Elias was fixing a broken water line when his old radio suddenly came to life. Static filled the room. He froze. The radio had been dead for weeks. Slowly, he walked over and picked it up. "This is Rourke," he said carefully. "Who's there?" At first, only static. Then, a voice. Cold, clean, professional. "Unregistered homestead on Dustfall. This is a corporate retrieval unit. We are tracking a lost asset." Elias's grip tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied. "Signal logs indicate a pod crash within your territory." The voice continued. "You are advised to report any findings immediately." Elias glanced at Lena. She stood very still, listening. "I haven't seen anything," Elias said. There was a pause. Then the voice came again. "Be advised. The asset is highly valuable. Non-compliance will result in penalties." The signal cut. Silence returned. Elias slowly lowered the radio. "Well," he muttered, "that didn't take long." Lena spoke first. "They are looking for me." Elias looked at her. "Yeah, I figured that." She stepped closer. "They will not stop." "Yeah," Elias said again. "That part too." There was a pause. Then Lena said, "I should leave." Elias frowned. "What?" "If I go, they will not harm you," she explained. "You are not part of this." Elias shook his head. "Not happening." "You don't understand," she said. "I am not normal. I was made for something." "Yeah," Elias replied. "You mentioned that." She hesitated. Then she said the truth. "I am not fully human." The words hung in the air. Elias didn't react immediately. He just looked at her. Then he sighed. "Lena," he said, "out here, nobody's normal. That is not the same." "Maybe not," Elias admitted, "but it doesn't change anything." She looked confused. "It changes everything." "No," Elias said firmly. "It doesn't." He stepped closer. "You were left to die out there," he continued. "I'm not sending you back to whoever did that. They created me. Then they shouldn't have thrown you away." Lena stared at him, trying to understand. "Why?" she asked again. Why help me? Elias was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because someone should. That night, neither of them slept. The air felt tense, heavy, like something was coming. And it was far away, beyond the horizon. Lights appeared in the sky, small at first, then growing. Ships, more than one, moving fast. Elias saw them from the window. His face hardened. Guess they found us, he said. Lena stood beside him, watching the lights. Her expression changed. Not fear, something else. Awareness. They are close, she said. Elias grabbed his rifle. Then we don't have much time. He looked at her. You still want to leave? Lena looked at the sky, then at the house, then at Elias. For the first time, she hesitated. I don't know, she said softly. Elias nodded. Good, he replied, because I'm not letting them take you. Outside, the lights grew brighter. The sound of engines echoed across the empty land. Duskfall was no longer quiet, and the fight was coming. The ships arrived before sunrise. They did not land far away. They came straight for the ranch. 3 dark vessels hovered low over the red land, their engines shaking the ground. Dust rose into the air, spinning wildly around them. Elias stood outside his house, rifle in hand. Beside him, Lena watched silently. The wind had stopped. Everything felt still, too still. They're not wasting time, Elias said. Lena didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the ships. They know exactly where I am, she said quietly. Yeah, Elias replied. That radio call wasn't just a warning. It was tracking. One of the ships lowered closer to the ground. A ramp opened. Figures stepped out, armored, precise, not like raiders. These moved like machines. They don't look friendly, Elias muttered. They are not, Lena said. Elias moved quickly. Inside, he said. Now. They entered the house. Elias shut the door and locked it, though he knew it wouldn't stop much. He grabbed extra power cells, checked his rifle, and pulled out an old box from under the table. Inside were tools, wires, small devices. Ever set traps? He asked. Lena looked at him. No. Well, Elias said, you're about to learn. Minutes passed. Outside, the soldiers spread out across the land. Slow, careful. They were not rushing. They didn't need to. Elias placed small shock traps along the entrance path. He rigged the old fence line to overload if touched. It wasn't much, but it was something. Lena watched everything, learning fast, very fast. Do they feel pain? She asked. Elias paused. Probably, he said, but I don't think they care much about it. She nodded. Then she stepped outside. Elias turned quickly. Hey, what are you doing? But Lena didn't stop. She walked a few steps onto the dry land. Then she knelt. Her hand touched the ground. At first, nothing happened. Then the soil shifted. Just a little. Elias stared. What? Lena closed her eyes. I can feel it, she said softly. The ground, the water, the life inside. There's life in that. Elias asked. Yes, she said. Weak, but still there. Her fingers pressed deeper into the soil, and slowly, the ground darkened, like it was waking up. Elias took a step closer. You're doing that? I think so. A loud sound cut through the moment. A voice echoed across the land. Asset LV-17. It called. You are required to surrender immediately. Elias looked up. One of the armored soldiers had stepped forward. A speaker on his shoulder carried the voice. Failure to comply will result in forced retrieval, the voice continued. Elias raised his rifle. Yeah, he muttered. Figured. He looked at Lena. Inside. Now. This time, she obeyed. The first attack came fast. 2 soldiers moved toward the house. The moment they crossed the fence, a burst of energy exploded. The trap activated. One of them fell instantly, sparks flying from his armor. The other stumbled back. Elias fired. A sharp blue shot hit the soldier's chest, knocking him to the ground. Still works, Elias said under his breath. But more were coming. A lot more. They surrounded the ranch. Step by step, Closing in. Elias fired again, hitting another target. But for every one that fell, two more moved forward. They're testing defenses, he said. Lena stood behind him, watching, learning. They are adapting, she said. Yeah, Elias replied. So we need to be faster. Suddenly, a loud blast at the side of the house. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. They've got heavy tools, too, Elias said. Another blast. Stronger. The wall cracked. We can't stay here, Lena said. Elias looked around. There weren't many options. Then we move, he said. They ran out the back. The open land stretched before them. No cover. No safety. The soldiers saw them immediately. Target in sight. The voice echoed. Shots fired. Bright energy beams cut through the air. Elias pulled Lena down behind a broken fence. Stay low, he shouted. The ground exploded nearby. Dust flew everywhere. They're not holding back, he said. They never were, Lena replied. Elias looked at her. Can you do that thing again? He asked. With the ground. Lena hesitated. I don't know how far it works. Try, Elias said. She nodded. Then she stepped forward, ignoring the danger, ignoring the shots. She placed both hands on the ground, closed her eyes. At first, nothing. Then, the earth moved, not violently, but deeply. The soil shifted in waves. Small cracks formed, then closed again. Plants, tiny, dry, nearly dead, began to change. They straightened, darkened, grew, fast. Elias stared in shock. No way. The ground under the soldiers began to soften. Their steps became slower, less stable. What is happening? One of them said over the comm. Lena's voice was calm. They do not belong here. The land responded. Vines, thin but strong, pushed through the soil, wrapping around boots, pulling, slowing them down. The air changed too. Dust lifted, then dropped. The wind shifted direction suddenly, blowing hard against the soldiers. Elias took the chance. He stood and fired. 1, 2, 3 shots. Each one hit. Each one counted. But then, a heavy unit stepped forward. Bigger, stronger, not affected as easily. It raised a weapon, fired. The blast hit near Elias. He was thrown back hard. His rifle flew from his hands. He hit the ground with a painful thud. Elias! Lena shouted. He didn't respond immediately. The heavy unit moved toward him. Slow, certain. Lena stood up. Her expression changed. No confusion. No fear. Just focus. She stepped forward. The ground beneath her feet darkened again. Stronger this time. You will stop, she said. The unit raised its weapon. But before it could fire, the ground beneath it collapsed. Not deep, but enough. It lost balance. Lena raised her hand. The vines tightened, pulled, held it in place. Elias groaned. He slowly pushed himself up. His side hurt, bad, but he was still alive. He looked at Lena, and what he saw was not the same girl he found in the pod. She stood in the middle of the field, calm, powerful, connected to everything around her. The remaining soldiers stopped. They watched, calculated. Then the voice came again. Asset has exceeded projected limits. A pause. Then retreat. Just like that. They pulled back, step by step. Then, quickly, returning to the ships. Within minutes, they were gone. The sky was empty again. Silence returned to dustfall. Elias sat on the ground, breathing heavily. Lena walked toward him. You are injured, she said. I've had worse, he replied. She knelt beside him. Why did you stay? She asked. Elias gave a small, tired smile. Told you, he said. Didn't seem right to leave you. Lena looked at him, then at the land, then back at him. Something inside her had changed. She understood now. Not fully, but enough. The ranch was damaged. The land was scarred. But something new had begun. Something stronger. And this time, Lena was not running. The ships did not come back the next day, or the day after. Dustfall returned to silence. But it was not the same silence as before. Elias sat outside his house, leaning against the wall. His side still hurt from the blast. Every breath reminded him that he was not as strong as he used to be. Still, he was alive. That was enough. Lena stood a few steps away, looking at the land. The ground around the ranch had changed. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough to notice. Small patches of green had appeared where there was once only dry dust. The soil looked darker in places. Even the air felt softer. Elias watched her quietly. "You did all that?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "Not all," she said. "The land is helping. I just guide it." Elias let out a slow breath. "Didn't think I'd ever see this place look like that." Lena looked at him. "You stayed," she said. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I did." "You could have given me to them," she added. Elias shrugged slightly. "Could have," he said, "but I didn't." Lena didn't speak for a moment. Then she said something simple. "Thank you." Elias nodded once. He wasn't good with big words. Days passed. Slowly, the ranch began to recover. Elias repaired the broken fence. Lena helped, learning quickly how to fix things a human way. She didn't complain. She didn't get tired easily. But now, she also asked questions. Small ones. "Why do you fix the fence this way?" "Because it works," Elias replied. "Why not build something stronger?" Elias smirked. "Because I don't have the parts for something stronger." Lena thought about that. Then the next day, the ground near the fence became harder, more stable, easier to build on. Elias noticed. "You're cheating," he said. Lena tilted her head. "I am improving." Elias laughed quietly. "Yeah, I guess you are." At night, they sat outside together. The sky above dustfall was still filled with stars, but now it felt different, less empty. Elias looked at Lena. "You remember everything now?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "No, only parts." "Like what?" She hesitated. Then she said, "I was made to help planets like this, to fix them, to make them better for human life." Elias nodded slowly. "Sounds useful." "It was not meant to be a choice," she continued. "I was supposed to follow commands. Always." Elias looked at her. "But you didn't." "No," she said. "Why?" Lena looked at the ground, then at him. "I did not want to be controlled," she said. "And I wanted to understand." "Understand what?" She paused. "Humans." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think so far?" Lena thought carefully. "They are strange," she said. Elias chuckled. "That's one way to put it." "They make choices that are not logical," she continued. "They protect others even when it is dangerous. They stay when it would be easier to leave." She looked at him. "You stayed." Elias didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "Yeah, I did." One morning, Elias noticed something new. Tracks, fresh, leading toward the ranch. He picked up his rifle immediately. Lena stepped beside him. "They are not the same as before," she said. Elias narrowed his eyes. "You can tell?" "Yes." They followed the tracks, carefully, slowly, and then they saw them. Not soldiers, not machines. People. 3 figures stood near the edge of the ranch. Their clothes were worn, their faces tired. Travelers. One of them raised a hand. "We don't mean trouble," he called out. Elias didn't lower his rifle. "What do you want?" he asked. The man stepped forward slightly. "We heard about this place," he said. "A ranch that survived. A place where the land is changing." Elias glanced at Lena, then back at the man. "Who told you that?" he asked. The man gave a small smile. "Word travels," he said. "Even out here." Elias was silent for a moment. Then he said, "This place isn't easy." "We know," the man replied, "but nowhere else is either." There was a long pause. Then Elias lowered his rifle. "All right," he said. "You can stay. For now." The man nodded. "Thank you." More people came after that. Not many, but enough. A small group. Families. Workers. People who had nowhere else to go. They brought tools. Supplies. Hope. The ranch began to grow. Slowly, naturally, Lena helped the land. Elias helped the people. Together, they built something new. One evening, Elias sat outside again. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange and red. Lena sat beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Elias said, "They might come back." Lena nodded. "Yes. You ready for that?" She looked at the land, at the growing life, at the small lights from the new homes. Then back at him. "Yes," she said. Elias smiled slightly. "Good." He looked up at the sky. "Funny thing," he said. "What?" Lena asked. "I ordered a male companion once," he said. "Long time ago." Lena looked at him. "I know," she said. "You do." "It was in the system," she replied. "That is why my pod came near your location." Elias blinked. "So you were sent to me?" Lena shook her head. "No," she said. "I was not supposed to arrive." Elias chuckled. "Yeah, that sounds about right." He looked at her. "But you did anyway." "Yes." There was a quiet moment. Then Elias said, "Best mistake that ever happened to me." Lena didn't fully understand the phrase, but she understood the feeling. And that was enough. The wind moved softly across Dustfall. Not harsh, not violent, just gentle. For the first time in many years, the planet felt alive. Far away, in deep space, a report was filed. Asset LV-17, status, unstable. Location, active human settlement zone. Recommendation, avoid engagement. They had decided. Dustfall was no longer worth the risk. Back on the ranch, Elias stood up slowly. "Come on," he said. "We got work to do." Lena stood with him. "Yes," she said. They walked together toward the growing land, toward the future they were building. Not because they were ordered to, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And on a forgotten world at the edge of space, a lonely cowboy was no longer alone. And a girl who was never meant to belong finally had a home,